What's up guys, my name is Ace, and last week I shared my initial impressions of Season 2 of Black Ops 7, and in that, toward the end, I had a brief session just talking about a couple new issues that had popped up, or had been persisting and got a little bit worse. However, since then, several more issues have been arising that have apparently been introduced with Season 2, and some of these are actually pretty big issues that are having a negative impact on the gameplay experience. So today, we're going to be going through these. And let's just dive right into it with a brief recap of some of the issues that I mentioned in that first video. The first one that was introduced with Season 2 is the HKDs. They're not always landing on the map when called in. Sometimes they work just fine, but many other times you'll see that the pods that deploy the HKDs, they just sit up in the air, they'll just hover there, and they won't actually drop the HKDs themselves. And therefore you don't get to use your streak. And then if anybody else earns HKDs while those pods are stuck in the air hovering, they won't be able to call theirs in because the airspace for that will be full. So that one is quite an obvious issue. I'm sure they're aware of that one by now, and we'll likely be seeing a fix to that. Next, another thing that I mentioned in that video that wasn't brand new with Season 2, but I'm going to bring it up here again. That is a bunch of various loadout related issues. The big one for me, and I know many are experiencing this, especially with the new guns, is I can't create more than one build with them. So I can set up my attachments just fine, but if I want to duplicate that build or just create a separate build with different attachments, it won't let me do that. And that's obviously very frustrating when I'd really like to have some variety to choose from, and I'd like to not have to be constantly rebuilding them from memory. And those are kind of the main ones that I talked about. However, as I said, there are several more that have come out since then. And a really big one that's having an impact on the gameplay experience is a bunch of new audio bugs with the game where several sounds, including enemy footstep sounds, are simply not playing at all, even when those players aren't using Ninja. And I can even reproduce this in private matches just fine. As you can see here, my exclusive bot account is not using the Ninja perk, and just have a listen for yourself. So there you go. Obviously, very clear issue there where footsteps are literally just not playing. It turns out it's not just footsteps that are the problem here. There's also several situations where like field upgrades aren't emitting a sound that they should be emitting, like a scrambler, for instance. Usually they're quite loud and easy to detect and find through audio alone. Now they're often not playing any audio whatsoever. I've also seen a lot of reports of the score streak announcements simply not coming in. So an enemy will call a streak in and the announcer doesn't say anything about that streak at all. So definitely some big audio issues that were introduced with this update, and especially when it comes to those footsteps, that's a pretty serious issue because it appears everybody's getting Ninja for free. However, I can't guarantee that this is working this way all the time for everyone. So you might think it's safe to just go without Ninja and run up on people, but it's possible some enemies will still hear your footsteps normally. I don't really know for sure, and so I really hope this is a bug they can get on top of in the not too distant future. Next, I've seen a lot of reports of people experiencing a reload bug, particularly with the two new guns, where after they reload their gun, they'll be unable to fire for like a couple seconds after the reload. And that's obviously frustrating. I haven't been able to replicate this one myself. I've heard rumors that if you play Warzone and then you transition to multiplayer, that this can happen to you. I tried doing that and I couldn't get it to happen, but I have seen clips of people experiencing this. So clearly there is a bug that's present there with reloading. Next, something that may or may not actually be a bug, but it wasn't announced at all. For the Warden, they've simply removed the damage barrel. It doesn't exist anymore. And so, obviously, many people are wondering, where did that go? And it would be one thing if they removed this on purpose and like put it in the patch notes that they decided to remove this for balancing reasons or something, but there was no mention of it. So as far as I'm aware, this is a bug as well. And then finally, after all of that, there's another very serious gameplay related bug that I'd heard rumors of before Season 2, but I was unable to reproduce this in private matches. Every time I tested it, it was working just fine. But now after Season 2, I can reproduce this very consistently. This is when the enemy calls in a UAV, you are not guaranteed to be hidden from that UAV when using Ghost and firing with a suppressed weapon. As we can see here, I'm moving, I'm staying off the radar. At no point did my Ghost deactivate. And yet, after firing for a bit, you'll see that I'm getting picked up by that UAV. Now, to be clear, I'm not showing on the minimap every time I fire my gun, and it's not showing me like in real time and following me as I fire my gun, unlike if I were firing an unsuppressed gun. but it does appear to be deactivating my ghost perk from the enemy's perspective, and only the enemy's perspective, because you can see in this game if your ghost perk is active by using your arrow on the minimap. If that arrow is faded, that means ghost should be active for you, and therefore you shouldn't be picked up by an enemy's UAV sweeping. Whereas if it's not faded and it looks like this means ghost is deactivated because you stood still for too long, and now for as long as it's deactivated, you will get picked up by that sweeping radar. But then again, the moment you start moving again, it will fade away and ghost will activate, or at least it should be activating, and that's clearly not happening when firing with a suppressor. And that appears to be a very obvious bug as well. I don't believe that's intentional design, because if it were intentional, first off, we probably would have heard about it, because that's not how it's ever worked in the past, or that's not how it should be working. And second, you would think that it would show your ghost perk disabling on the minimap if it was disabling your ghost by firing with a suppressor, and that's clearly not happening either. And so it does appear at the moment, using ghost and a suppressor, even if you're constantly on the move and keeping ghost active, it is not guaranteed to keep you hidden from enemy UAVs. And that is not a good thing. So again, I hope this is something they can get on top of, because until then, we don't really have full stealth builds. One last thing I wanted to tag on the end of the video is not necessarily a bug. I think it's just a strange way that they've designed Safeguard, where first off, there's no overtime like we saw back in the original Safeguard with Black Ops 3. And while I would prefer to have overtime, it's not necessary for a mode like Safeguard. You can always decide the winner in other ways. So if neither team was able to successfully escort the robot, then you could just make it so the team that escorted it farther is the winner of that game. That's totally reasonable. Or alternatively, if in the first round that team is able to successfully escort the robot, then in the second round, the next team should have to escort that robot within that amount of time or faster, and if they don't, then they end up losing. And that's kind of how it's working right now, but the weird thing about this is the fact that, let's just say the first team escorts that robot really fast. Let's just say a random number here, 30 seconds. They escort the robot, start to finish, they don't get stopped at all. They finish that round in just 30 seconds. Then with the next round, the other team has to escort that robot within that same amount of time or faster if they want to win the game. And if they don't, they lose the game, but the round doesn't end. It just lets you continue playing on, even though you've already lost the game. And I believe at that point, the only way that it's possible to win the game is if you drop a nuke. I think that would win you the game at that point. But what that means is you're often playing the end of the second round when the match has already been decided. It's already over, but it's not ending the game for you. And I think the way this should be working is if the first team escorts that robot in 30 seconds, then the timer on round 2 should be set at 30 seconds. And if they fail to escort it within that timer, then the round ends and the game ends. To me, that just makes a lot more sense. Even though it could result in very fast matches of Safeguard, I definitely would prefer that over continuing to play around knowing the game is already over, and yet we still have to wait for the timer to count all the way down to 0, regardless of that fact. Either way, I am still enjoying myself with Safeguard. I just feel like it's a bit strange, and I know I've seen a lot of complaints regarding this as well, so I wanted to bring it up in this video. And overall, while I have generally been enjoying myself, it is frustrating to see a bunch of these new bugs pop up, especially because a couple of them are directly impacting the gameplay experience. It's not like we're talking about weird UI bugs or really edge case things that you maybe see like 1 in every 100 games that you play. There are several issues here that are directly affecting the moment-to-moment gameplay experience, and that's a big problem. So I'm really hoping they can get on top of some of these very quickly. And this is where I'm curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. First off, how are you feeling about these issues, and have you been noticing them yourself? And second, are there any other issues, particularly newer issues that have come with Season 2 that I didn't mention in today's video that you would like to bring some awareness to? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.